Okay, we're on part 5 of quotes about geniuses from this book, Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers. The first quote for today: talent does what it can, genius does what it must. A sense of obligation to fulfill one's destiny. That's a good thing. Okay, Maurice Baring has a couple quotes here. He says, in contrast between Salieri and Mozart, we see the talent that does what it can with Salieri and the genius that does what it must. That's a great movie, by the way. Amadeus is the all-time greatest movie ever made about becoming a genius and living as a genius. Probably the second best movie would be The Agony and the Ecstasy, which is sort of the contrast with the relationship between Pope Julius and Michelangelo. Amadeus was better because there was more dynamic emotional tension between Salieri and Mozart, and the guy who played Mozart was fantastic. Salieri, too, was fantastic. It's just a magnificent movie. It's one of the greatest movies you'll ever see in your whole life, Amadeus. Everybody should see that movie. Same thing with Agony and the Ecstasy as well. They're both magnificent. Okay. And I love that song, Serenade for the Winds, when Salieri's talking about how he saw Mozart do it. Okay, Maurice Baring says, geniuses notice things and connections that others don't. Yeah, I thought about that idea of the geniuses see things. It's like a dolphin. When a dolphin goes up above the water and then it goes back into the water, in a sense, the dolphin knows that it's swimming in water, whereas the other fish don't know they're swimming in water. And that's a lot of being a genius, I think, is the ability to ask a simple question and try to answer that simple question. Because that's a lot of times where big discoveries come from, revising one's assumptions, okay, preconceptions. All right, here's a great one. Oh, here's just one last good quote. One is always wrong if one is rude. Yeah, usually you're doing something wrong if you have to be rude. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes you need to be rude, but most of the time you don't. D.K. Simonton, this guy devoted his life to studying geniuses. He wrote several books about geniuses. He said, a genius is someone who transforms their field. And that's an important point too, because sometimes people will say to me, oh, so-and-so is a genius because they were a good student. And I'm like, no. School is mostly just a memorization contest, okay? So if you get good grades in school, that means you're good at memorization, okay? That's nice, but that doesn't mean you did anything original. To be a genius, you have to do something original where you transform a field, okay? Somebody who learns really fast and memorizes stuff more than you'd expect for their age, that's a prodigy. And again, that's nice, but that's not the same thing as a genius. A genius is somebody who can take a field, master the field, and change it in a new, improved, better way. That's real genius achievement. Okay, geniuses surprise people. Yeah, that's another thing too, because I'll know, like, if I'm reading the quotes of an author, if they're surprising me once, it might have just been lucky, like a one-hit wonder music group. But if they surprise me again and again, I'm like, wow, this person's got something. It's like Aristotle had said, the best sign of a genius is someone who makes clever metaphors. Okay. Charles Garfield, geniuses need help. A one-man band never gets that big. That's also true too, probably, is that a lot of geniuses, you never hear of them. They get erased from the history books, hidden from the history books. Like Isaac Newton probably wouldn't have become that famous if Voltaire hadn't written about him so much, okay? Also, geniuses a lot of times are good at being scholars, but they stink at other things, Isaac Newton never got married, never had any kids. Okay, Heinrich Heine, he said, great genius takes shape when it makes contact with another genius. Yeah, geniuses like talking to other geniuses. We automatically get along. I know, because I've met a few in my life, and we always have fun talking to each other, even if we might differ in a bunch of other ways. Almost always, that's true. Samuel Johnson, genius is that energy that collects, combines, amplifies, and animates. Okay, here's just some examples of geniuses, people that are worth studying. If you've got the time and you want to learn, these are people worth studying. The ancient Greeks, you want to know Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Aristotle's the most important. But you'll learn tons of useful things from each one of them. Okay, and the best book to read, if you only want to read one book to get yourself started, would be The Light in the Cave by Arthur Herman. It's the greatest book ever written about philosophy. And then if you want to study the ancient Greeks, Rufus Fears is the best historian on that subject. Okay, Aeschylus, Euripides, Sophocles, and you can even argue that Thucydides belongs in there as well. Okay, and there's other ones too. That's just getting you started. These are all, it's like one of the greatest age of geniuses ever was Athens in the 400s before Christ. Okay, Cicero is the greatest Roman to know. If you only study one Roman, study Cicero, and Cicero connects you to everything else. The Robert Harris series of books on him, the trilogy, is a magnificent way to start on Cicero. And of course, the Rufus Fears lectures are magnificent as well. Rogier van der Weyden, magnificent artist in the 1400s. Same thing with Sandro Botticelli. They're the two greatest artists of the 1400s. In the 1500s, Michelangelo and Raphael are the two greatest artists. 1600s, Caravaggio. You also want to know about Pope Julius. He's in the center of it. He's the pope that commissioned Michelangelo and Raphael. Magnificent. He defended the Vatican. He's what a pope should be. People say, oh, well, he wasn't that good a pope. He had syphilis and he had illegitimate kids. Good. You need heterosexual men, okay? Look at the papacy now. It's a piece of crap because it's been infiltrated by lefty pinko, commie, homo bullshit, okay? And they're destroying the place, all right? You need noble masculinity in there. You need, guys that have been married. They know what it's like to deal with a family and all that, and who are going to stand up for what's right, not all these exploiters that have taken advantage of the whole thing. When you had big families, it was okay, but now you got small families, so nobody wants their kid to be a priest, and sort of been taken over by homosexuals and pedophiles and people who want to destroy the church, enemies of the church. The current pope is an antichrist. Okay, anyways, continuing on with geniuses. Great other painters too, Thomas Cole, Edmund Layton. There's a whole bunch of other ones. John Everett Millais, the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. Thomas Cole's from the Hudson River School. They're natural painters. Albert Bierstedt's, probably the greatest landscape painter who ever lived. And he was also related to Thomas Cole's day in the Hudson School of Landscape Painters in the United States. And they were all very religious. Edmund Layton was another one of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood sort of disciples, going back to John Everett Millais. Okay, Cardinal John Henry Newman was magnificent in the Catholic revival of the 1800s, which corresponded to the Victorian Renaissance. The Victorian Renaissance literary geniuses would be John Ruskin, who popularized the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. Oscar Wilde, magnificent Irish writer who came into England and was the best playwright in the world of his day. Michael Faraday, magnificent scientific genius. John Stuart Mill is a good philosopher, even though he's a bit of an asshole. Augustus Welby Pugin, the great architect, a Catholic architect. Voltaire, Hugo, the Frenchman. Voltaire from the 1700s, Hugo from the 1800s, Notre Dame and Les Mis. Dostoevsky, the best. Oh, I forgot to put Charles Dickens in there, of course, for the English as the greatest writer of the 1800s. Dostoevsky, the Russian, Brothers Karamazov, the idiot, the gambler, and all that other stuff. The two greatest female geniuses of all time are Ayn Rand and Ann Coulter. I put them in pink. Some other good literary geniuses, actually not as good as these two. Well, Michael Crichton was pretty fantastic for suspense novels, if you like suspense novels. And he did the TV show ER, which was a great TV show in its day. Tom Wolfe was a magnificent writer. Great scientific geniuses. You know them already from my other lectures. But anyways, this is just giving you a sense. If you want to study genius, musical geniuses, Bach, Mozart, Handel, Beethoven, Chopin, Brahms. That'll get you started. Okay, great founding fathers of the USA, the geniuses Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. Incredible. As Ayn Rand had said, USA had the greatest founding fathers of any country ever in the history of the world. Okay, I'll do the next quote here on geniuses. Through practice, reflection, teaching, success and failure, and again reflection, man's mind unconsciously will link what he acquires with his innate gifts so that a unity results which will leave the world amazed. Goethe. And so that's what Goethe said. He said it was his duty to just keep on learning and just producing the best work he could and making new versions of Faust, for example. But that's what happens, and Schopenhauer had said is that when a genius studies a subject and develops his knowledge on it and presents it to the world, is like a beautiful painting. Versus when you see the typical university scholar who's just doing it for the money or doesn't really care. He says it's more like looking at a painter's palette. Everything is organized, perhaps, but you're like, what's the point? There's nothing new there. Okay, Goethe's next quote. My most important task is to go on developing as much as possible whatever is and remains in me, distilling my own particular abilities again and again. Okay, so that's the idea that, it's like their destiny to be genius. It's their part in life, the role they play in life. And if they appreciate that, they keep on developing it and they do magnificent things. Okay, and then here's the Aristotle quote. It is a mark of genius to make good metaphors. Okay, that's it for part 5. I hope you found that helpful.